This is a Project B.A.I.T. news analysis, the Rambo Report for my people. In the news recently was a lot of discussion about the anniversary of the Million Man March, the original Million Man March that occurred in 1995. This was the 20th anniversary. Well, actually, better said, it was the second anniversary 20 years later. All right. It was held in Washington, D.C. This was one of those long marches from Detroit to Washington, D.C., roughly 600 miles. So if you went from Detroit to D.C. and came back, roughly 1,200 miles or so, somewhere between 1,200 and 1,300 miles. Well, I know one of the fellows who went. He had gone to the original march in 1995, and he had become a Million Man alumni. And then he decided he'd go to this one in 2015. And I know him from a daily lunch group where we meet on, a group of us meet on a regular basis at a senior center to have lunch. So in the weeks coming up to it, we would hold a discussion about it. I would ask him questions, you know, why it was going, what were his interests, what he thought about it, his perspective on it. And we had, I would say, fairly extensive discussions. He'd be doing his work, he'd bring in his work to our sessions, our lunch, and he'd be doing his work, but then every once in a while he'd take a break and we'd hold a discussion. Well, afterwards, after he went, he came back, we sat down, and of course I asked him again. Well, I didn't ask him so much as he began to volubly tell me about what happened on his trip, bus trip incidentally, to Washington, D.C. First of all, he had a choice of buses. There were at least 3 groups locally from Detroit who were putting together buses to go. His own group, a political group, and then another action group. And he indicated that none of the buses, to his knowledge, were full. They had maybe 2/3 to 3/4 people in the buses. They were 40 or 50 passenger buses, and they had 30 or 40 people. So as such, each busload that went to D.C. from Detroit had a goodly number of people. He went into the cost. The cost ran from anywhere from $200 to $300, depending on how much you paid for your hotel, the quality of the hotel, and whether you stayed 1 night or 2 nights. In his case, he spent 2 nights there, Saturday night, Friday night, and Saturday night, and came back Sunday morning. He indicated that the hotel he stayed in was a downtown first-class hotel, and from it he could see out the window and also on the street the people. And he said what struck him was, even though the hotel was downtown and in vision or sight of the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, the national Capitol, there were many, many people, homeless people, sleeping out on the street. And this really put him off. And this typically doesn't get discussed often, is the number of homeless people in the Capitol. Now, I have seen and posted pictures on our website, on the Concept Institute Political Affairs website, pictures from 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago of poor black people living in hovels in D.C. with the picture of the Capitol in the background. Well, he says that 40, 50 years later, things haven't changed financially, and that he was horrified by it. And in fact, that's what he talked about most in terms of his impression. Not the speeches as such, the long speech made by the organizer of the march, Minister Farrakhan, but or the other shorter speeches organized and presented by other young people, young organizers and leaders. but by the homeless people on the street. The other thing he talked most about was the walk. His hotel, though downtown, was at least 2 miles away from the Capitol. And then there was another mile to where the speeches were being made. So as a senior, he had to walk as such 3 miles there and 3 miles back. Well, in our discussions prior to going, I told him to wear his walking shoes. He indicated that he did wear his gym shoes. But even doing that, by the time he walked 2 miles, his feet were hurting, his ankles were swollen and sore. So he had to rest. And while he was resting, another person sat down on the bench with him, a homeless person. And he did what they'd always do. He put a bag on him. He said he had to keep his head together to prevent from having a Willie Lynch thought. So he made a donation. And then wanting to hear and see the goings-on at the Capitol for the Million Man March, he decided, swollen ankles and sore feet and all, that he would walk another couple miles. I'll continue with this discussion of the Million Man March in the next segment. This has been another Project B.A.I.T. News Analysis for my people.
Our Senior Technology Ministry trains seniors how to use their mobile devices. We meet every Wednesday, 9:30 a.m. at Plymouth United Church of Christ, 600 East Warren Avenue. You can contact us via phone at 313-204-2432 or visit our website at www.seniortechz.com. I am Divine with the Concept East Facebook page report. We encourage you to go on to Facebook and in your search bar type in Concept East. Here you will find multiple G pages. G stands for group pages that Concept East has specifically developed for you in mind. We have created these pages to elevate the consciousness of Black people. If you are looking to find out information about economics and business, visit our CE group page on economic and business. We will also have information on that page about our financial literacy fair. We encourage you to become a member and like our group pages. This is Divine with the Facebook Concept East report.
This is the Project B.A.I.T. News Analysis, the Rambo Report for my people. I'll be continuing with the discussion of the Million Man March, the impressions of one of my colleagues, an alumni of the original Million Man March in 1995, who made the decision to go back to Washington, D.C. in 2015 for the second Million Man March. Now, the reports about the first march indicated that there were about 1 million people, and then over time, the reports grew to about 2 million people who attended the march. With this march, all the estimates, at least at this point, say around 500,000 people attended. Now, actually, my thesis is when you give a march, the first march, let's say, has 1,000 people, the next march has 10%, 100 people. And if you do a third march, it has 10% of the 100, or 10 people. That is to say, it is not a growing phenomenon. Well, one of the excellent things in terms of the development or plan for the march this year is that it was 20 years later. So that actually, as was indicated to me, the march this time overwhelmingly drew the next generation. All right? Even though it did draw some of the alumni, most of the alumni are seniors, elders. And the fact of the matter is the buses that went down to D.C. still had to park miles away. And when you got off the bus, you had to walk to your hotel, and then you had to walk to the march. So the logistics were never planned for the people. And perhaps, in fact, they couldn't plan the logistics. I mean, how can you plan logistics for 500,000 people? But in our discussions prior to him going, I used to ask him, well, what's the program? He never was able to provide a program to indicate what he was going to see. He was just, in fact, simply going. All right? So when he got there, I asked him, well, did you get any maps? No, he didn't get any maps of the area. Now, granted, you can't have maps for 500,000 people, but you could have 100,000 maps. Somebody could have had that. In other words, he didn't know where he was going, nor what the program was. So that was some of the feedback or the analysis that I had in terms of him and his venture. And in our preparatory discussions, I would ask him repeatedly about this, because I thought going over 600 miles and not knowing what the program is going to be and not knowing where you're going to be and how you're going to get there and get back seemed to me to be a little short-sighted. So at least I advised him of that, and he had the thought in his mind. We also discussed the weather, and I told him to check the weather on the internet and also to carry an umbrella. Well, the good fortune is that the weather was beautiful in D.C. Now the results. Who knows what the results will be? I mean, you take these marches, and these long marches where people come from around the country, what kind of research can actually be done, either in preparation, planning for it, which virtually none was done either. We discussed that as well. Nor any review, any kind of scientific review of it. Because one of the things that a colleague of mine, Dika Kilimanjaro of the University of Kemet Press, says is that our affairs should be scientifically analyzed. Our social affairs and our social actions should be scientifically analyzed. And I sort of agree with him. Because one other comment we got in our Sunday, in our daily luncheon sessions, the fellow asked, well, did I think it was valuable? And I told him, yeah, I thought it was valuable. You know, our colleague made the march. We had talked about it. He knew what he was doing. And I think it can have, to a certain degree, some valuable results. Certainly the people, I gather, who went there enjoyed themselves. And having 500,000 black folks happy is, to me, in this country, a singular value. But the results, you cannot scientifically analyze. Another critique that appears on our Concept East Institute of Political Affairs website on Facebook asks the question, how much money came in and where it will be spent? Will it just go into hotels or cars or vacations or other luxuries for the organizers? Well, that question was never answered for the original March of 1995, and I don't anticipate there'll be any kind of financial accountability for this one. Then the other thing I always ask of the people participating, who did the cleanup? he didn't carry a trash bag, and from the pictures I've seen, nobody who went carried a trash bag to clean up whatever mess they made. I do hope the officials in Washington, D.C. had enough trash baskets out there so that they could clean up the grounds after the 500,000 people left. Now, will there be another one 20 years hence? Well, if there is, why shouldn't there be? I won't be here to talk about it, in all likelihood. This has been another Project B.A.I.T. News Analysis, the Rambo Report for my people. First, I want to thank the people who watch the show, you, our viewing audience. We certainly want your input. In fact, you can contact us at Concept East Institute on Facebook and send in your comments, or you can become a friend. As I've said often, we have a number of sites, and we believe that one of them will be of some interest to you, specific interest. And we get a lot of hits, and we got a lot of folk who send messages to us. So you can go online and become a Facebook friend. And with that, you can put your input. In terms of, for example, we're in the process of starting to do interviews on location to put on our Concept East Institute sites. Up until this point, we have simply used material that's already in written form or videotape form. We haven't put new stuff on. But now we intend to put short segments of interviews about folk who are in organizations who are making the news in the struggle for their comments. So please join us. This is particularly important. We are trying to evolve technologically as the world changes. This is a Project B.A.I.T. News Analysis, the Rambo Report for my people. Clearly, we are involved in media, presenting you the For My People TV program. But we are also involved in other print media. We do a fair amount of print media. And one that we've been dealing with for the past few years is this one, the Detroit Smart Pages. This is their latest edition. And I have an article on it. Short marches, okay? And in this full page of discussion, I list 20 short marches that I think would be valuable. As you know, there are long marches, and recently there was an anniversary of the original Million Man March. It took a long march to D.C., and 500,000 people showed up. Well, in this article, I talk about short marches, and I say, I pose it to you, and I hope you'll pick up a copy of it and contact the editor and say how much you like my article. That if you, our viewing audience, 5,000 of you, do 20 short marches per month for the next 10 months, times 5,000. That will be our million march, our million-person march. That is, you will be doing, 5,000 will be doing 20 marches a month for 10 months. And if my mathematics is correct, that's 1,000,000 marches. Now, I've gone over this before with you, okay, on this program. Short marches, the efficacy of short local marches. For example, a couple of them that I really like. Saturday mornings at 6:30 a.m. on Channel 50, take the short march to turn on your TV set and watch For My People. You can do that every week. That's a short march, okay? And you get about 20 minutes of speeches on this short march every week. My speech, all right? And you do that for 10 months, once a week, all right? That's four of your marches of that 20 marches per month that I suggest. Then you can go on our Facebook site, Concept East Institute. And we have, interestingly enough, 20 group sites. And you can go on that because we refresh our sites 5 days a week. That is, we put on, 20 articles. That's the goal. 20 new articles a day. So you can get 100 articles a week on our Facebook sites, Concept East Institute. Just go online on your smartphone or on your computer or at the computer lab at your public library. You go online and get information from around the world. Now, one of the interesting, I think, sites that we've added recently is the Concept East Institute of Afro-Brazilian Affairs. Concept East Institute of Afro-Brazilian Affairs. We gather articles, data on Brazil in Brazilian Portuguese, which you probably can't read. But you can read the English translations, which are also included. And why is that important? Because of the nations in this hemisphere that have the closest parallel to us, Afro-Americans, is Brazil, for the Afro-Brazilians. Their experience is very close to ours. And what you can do is a comparative analysis. Why is that important, comparative analysis? Well, one of the ways you learn things, anything, is by comparative analysis. You can compare apples to oranges. You can compare train trips to bus trips or plane trips, okay? You can compare left to right, okay? You can compare tall to short. And out of that comparative analysis, you begin to learn mind. So if you want to look at Afrocentric cultures and the different experiences of black people in different cultures as a result of the transatlantic slave trade, which occurred in Brazil to a far greater extent than here in the U.S. So that currently we end up with over 100 million Afro-Brazilians and about 45 million Afro-Americans. So you can compare our experiences and then get some insights. And with some insights, you can begin to make decisions as to what actions you should take and how we should live our lives. This has been another Project B.A.I.T. News Analysis, the Rambo Report for My People.